Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video. My parents got married when they were very young, and their marriage had been a wreck ever since. They were highly incompatible due to differences in personalities, aims, goals, and the adults around them did not really give them another choice when my mother became pregnant with me, except for to get married. Otherwise, they would be disowned. Being 18, with not much experience in life and feeling like they wouldn't make it without the support of their families, my parents decided to get married, and it was instantly a mess. They were poles apart, but what brought and kept them together was their addiction. They had started drinking at a ripe age, and honestly, you cannot blame them alone, as being raised in a rough neighborhood and with adults around them leading the same type of lifestyle, this was normal to them. And that is how they lived throughout my childhood. After 2 years of my birth, my mother gave birth to my sister, and things only worsened since then. My parents kept falling deeper into the pit of their addiction and dragged me and my sister into the black hole. My parents' life affected my sister and I immensely. This wasn't all that bad during our childhood, but as we grew older, more aware, and started having more emotional needs, it definitely worsened. My parents were not able to give us any of that. They would simply provide us with the basic necessities. This was put to a stop when my grandparents, who supported us financially, passed away. And even though I was just 11 at that time, I knew our life was going to turn upside down, and it sure did. No financial support meant that my parents had to start working, and that is definitely not what they wanted to do. So they did the next best thing they could come up with in their hazed state of mind, and that was to leave us at a random relative's place. Family is very much valued, and our grandparents took their last breath, telling us all to stick together through our thick and thin times, so my relatives did take me and my sister in. We lived together at a lot of my dad's cousins' houses. His aunt's house, but understandably so. These people could not afford to take care of me and my sister together. Even though my sister and I weren't close, we did have a familial bond and were quite devastated when we were separated. We spend our lives like this, moving from one relative to another. There was never a formal adoption that took place, and we just moved every couple of years from one relative to another. The contact with my parents starts dwindling the moment we first move out of their houses. It completely stops once we turn 12 to 13, and honestly, I don't really miss them, as I barely ever had any memories of them to begin with. Well, I will turn 18 eventually, and I feel so glad that I will not have to live with all these people who clearly did not want me in their lives. I had started working to save up since the day I had turned 14, and along with some scholarships, college funds, and help from a few of my relatives, I was able to move out as soon as I graduated from high school. At this point, I have very little to no contact with my sister too because she was sent to my mother's side of the family. We would only occasionally send each other Christmas letters, and honestly, it was like every time I thought of talking to her, made me feel like all the memories of my family that I ever had would come back. Well, I got into a good college with a full scholarship and think this is it. I studied very hard, knowing full well that after this, I will be by myself with no support. I graduated with a great GPA and put myself through postgraduate school while working. After finishing my master's, I landed an amazing job that required me to move to a different city. I feel like I had nothing to lose, and so I had to move. The first few weeks, adjusting in this city was quite hard. Even though my colleagues were quite nice, there was only so much help I could ask from them. So I started to think of a way to try and make friends and meet new people. I do this while I'm on the train and I see a very familiar face standing right in front of me. It takes me a bit to figure out, and it almost feels extremely unrealistic, but it was my sister standing right in front of me. I am shocked. And as I need to get down in the next station, I know I have to be quick to decide if I want to approach her or not. I think about all the worst and best outcomes that can come out of it, and the good outweighed the bad. And so I quickly walk up closer to her and greet her. I get surprised at her reaction, as she instantly recognizes me and says my name and asks me what I'm doing here. I tell her in brief and ask for her phone number so that we can contact each other, and she happily gives it to me. I get home and once again contemplate if I want to contact her. I think a couple of times before deciding to text her, and I definitely do not regret it, at least during the start. We start talking and basically catch up with our lives through text. We instantly get along, and it feels like we just picked up where we left off. And it feels so amazing to find your person in a city where you know no one. After talking through texts and calls on a daily basis, my sister and I decided to meet so that she can show me around the city. I was quite nervous to see her, as meeting in real life is very different than talking on the phone or through text, but thankfully, we got along as well as we did through text. So well, in fact, that we started hanging out every other weekend. I even started making friends of my own through my sister. We went clubbing, shopping together, and even joined an art class. Things were going amazingly well. During one of the times we were hanging out, my sister suggested that we both join a dating app as a joke, and honestly, I was down for it as it had been a while since I got out of my last relationship. I installed the dating app and did not find anyone special the first couple of days I was there, so I just decided to stop using the app. Well, this was all until I got matched with a guy named Arthur. Arthur looks smart, handsome, is driven, and has pets. What else could a girl ask for? So we started talking. I'm not expecting much out of this, but we get along great with each other. So much so that we decided to meet just after a couple of weeks. I decided not to tell my sister anything until I was sure that I wanted to start seeing him. Arthur and I go on multiple dates together throughout the span of 2 months and decide that it is about time we talk about how we truly feel about each other. I feel like I'm on top of the moon as Arthur goes out of his way to buy me my favorite dandelion flowers and writes me a note to express how he feels for me. The next day, I do the same by baking him a batch of his favorite cookies and attaching a note on the top of the box, and that is where our love story starts. Or so I thought. Well, today my sister came over as we were chilling over a glass of wine and the doorbell rings. I open it to a bunch of parcels from different online stores. I feel quite confused, and so does my sister, as I have no clue where they have come from until I look over the cover and see Arthur's name. I find this a bit weird, as there was no occasion that would make Arthur send me so many gifts, but I decided to open them anyways. I decide to tell my sister about Arthur as I open the gifts, and I open them to find a lot of sundresses and heels in the packaging. Throughout this, my sister is extremely excited for me as she asks me to see a picture of him, and I pull one out of my gallery. My sister squints her eyes as she takes a look at the picture of me and Arthur. She looks like she has seen a ghost as she asks me where I met him in the most eerie tone. Her voice was low and nervous, and it was like she was shaking. I ask her why she looks so scared, and she tells me to first tell her where I met him. I tell her the entire story, how we met through a dating app, how we have been seeing each other for a while, and it is only today that we started officially dating. My sister's face looks like she's in pure panic, and she tells me that we need to leave the city. I feel scared by my sister's extreme reaction and panic as she's not explaining to me what happened between them, but she would not stop making a plan for us to escape. At one point, her yelling became so loud and scary that I practically had to put her out of my house because I needed time to think. I'm currently sitting here and thinking about what to do or even feel. I have stopped replying to my sister, who has been blowing up my phone. I even got a few texts from Arthur asking me if I liked the gifts. I'm really not sure what to do here. It's not like I have known my sister for too long, and it's the same with Arthur. Of course, I would lean towards believing my sister, but without any context, it's very hard to. I talked to a few of my friends from back in my hometown who say I was wrong for kicking my sister out and that I was for not hearing her out. So, Reddit AITA? I decided to call my sister today and talk to her. She told me that she was sorry for reacting the way she did and that she so desperately wanted to explain things to me. I thought I owed her this, so we decided to meet at the cafe. We meet there, and my sister looks like she has been crying a whole lot. Her eyes look puffy and red. I sit down with her and she starts to explain the situation to me. She starts off by telling me that she and Arthur met during her art class and they hit it off instantly. They went out for about a month and had the typical whirlwind romance before my sister found out he was cheating on her with a girl from the college that he went to. She broke it off with him instantly and decided to move on. That is when the stalking started. She explained to me how after that she started seeing him at random places, befriending her college classmates, and spamming her on social media, making new accounts. She told me that although this happened years ago, Arthur continued to show up in her life every once in a while by befriending people she knew and then pushing them away from her by his manipulation. This is shocking to me, but also contradictory to what Arthur had told me. He told me that it had only been 6 months since he returned back to the city, which he left due to something work-related. This also contradicted the fact that Arthur, who lives 2 hours away, would join an art class that is so far from him. I thought meeting my sister would answer my question, but this made me feel even more confused. If you guys have any advice on what I could do here, I would really appreciate it. I did not think my update would bring in even more conflict and confusion, but unfortunately it does. I had to cut off my sister, and honestly, I did not think it would be because of this reason. I decided to talk to Arthur about this situation directly, asking him if he knows my sister and a bit more of my background. His clueless reaction pretty much gave me the answer I needed, but I knew that wasn't enough to make me feel sure of myself. Well, I looked up Arthur on his previous social media, his LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, you name it. And almost all of them suggested he had been in another city until 6 months ago by looking at his following, location of his pictures, and such. Hell, even his company's website still had his name up as an employee at the previous branch he worked at. All of you might be wondering, if Arthur and my sister did not know each other at all, then why did my sister go so fast to do everything she had done? Arthur even answered this as he explained to me that my sister and him indeed knew each other, but not from the way that she told me they did. Well, apparently, they met when Arthur was a senior in high school and she was a junior in high school. She had an awkward crush on Arthur, and he found her to be pretty cute too. They got into a relationship, but not the serious kind. It was one of those casual high school relationships where you don't give a thought to compatibility or anything of that sort. Well, this resulted in them breaking up within a month, and Arthur thought that was it. But unfortunately, it wasn't, because my sister seemed like she had taken the breakup too seriously, as she would often call him drunk or even try to talk to him during school. Arthur and his friends found this extremely weird, but as it was only for a couple of months before high school ended and he left the city for college and then work, my sister's contact with him reduced except for the few occasional Instagram and Facebook requests. He didn't think much of it. This is where I am right now, extremely conflicted and in a sort of dilemma of what to do. My sister has been blowing up my phone and trying to act like things have gone back to normal, whereas Arthur had so very kindly told me that I could take as much time as I needed. For the time being, I have decided to take a break from my sister and have told her to not contact me for a while. Her reaction was, "Is there anything I can truly do here? Should I believe my sister or Arthur? Or neither and just move on?" NTA, your sister could have sat you down and talked to you instead of frantically yelling at you and scaring you. Something definitely seems wrong with Arthur if your sister's reaction is so extreme. I would definitely want to look into it and be a bit distant from him or your sister. ESH, sister is slightly the a-hole for putting up a scene instead of communicating clearly, and you for giving her a moment to calm down and letting her explain the situation. Not everyone can be calm instantly, especially if they are triggered by a memory, so I definitely understand where the sister is coming from. Do better, OP. I'm a 17-year-old female, and recently my father's stepmother and their 2 daughters, my stepsisters, moved to Australia earlier this year, where my mother, my siblings, and I live, from Ukraine due to the war going on there. My oldest stepsister, 19, female, Vladislava, has been having issues with a girl, Melanie, and her 2 friends, who have been picking on Vladislava mercilessly for having a rare kind of clunky and very Eastern European name. They have also been bullying her about her heritage and accent and the food that she eats for lunch. Vladislava has been coming home crying, saying she wishes she wasn't Ukrainian, Belarusian, choosing a normal nickname, lying about her heritage to other kids, not talking so people wouldn't hear her accent, and asking to take normal food, e.g., sandwiches, to school for lunch. When I first heard about this, I was very angry as Vladislava has already gone through so much, and she should never be ashamed of her background or where she comes from. My stepfather told me that other parents had told him that Melanie's parents were also making rude jokes about Vladislava and calling her the weird Slav kid and the refugee. I talked to Vladislava and encouraged her to stand up for herself and call Melanie rude names back. Melanie's real name, spelt backwards, is a kind of taboo word, and Vladislava started calling her that. Apparently, other kids thought this nickname was hilarious, especially the boys in her class, and it caught on quickly. And now, apparently, everyone calls her it. Melanie felt very embarrassed because all the boys would laugh at her, and her crush would too. And she cried to a teacher who got Vladislava big trouble, and she had to stay in for lunch for multiple days. My mother and stepmother think that while what Melanie and her friends did was absolutely awful and they deserve harsh punishment, I was immature and should have encouraged Vladislava to stand up for herself in a more respectful way and tell an adult because two wrongs don't make a right. My father thinks Melanie deserved it because due to her parents' position as being very involved in the school, meant that Melanie was seen as almost untouchable and never really punished properly because her parents would complain. While I do think this helped Melanie learn her lesson, I feel quite guilty that I made a 9-year-old get picked on because of her name. AITA? NTA. So it's okay for Melanie to make fun of Vladislava's name and heritage, but it's not okay for Vladislava to do the same to her. That's not how things work. Also, Vladislava couldn't have foreseen that it would escalate. I bet the others were also tired of Melanie. NTA. Sometimes the only thing that works is a similar response back at them, even kids.